All right, and we are live. Um, First off, want to apologize. It has been a minute since I have done video content for you guys. So I had put out the last one, which I think was the HA and the pie hole video, and I was cranking out a lot of content in a couple days to get all this stuff done. And then had a really cool opportunity to go down to Florida. A client from our auction business paid us to deliver some auction items to Florida for them. So we did that, and with that, I was able to do a really cool road trip with my middle son and or my middle child, my son, and yeah, we did that for about 11 days. And I was going to try to do content, but we just were bouncing from hotel to friends' houses to everything else, and it didn't pan out. Um, and we had fun, so I'm not going to apologize too much for that one. The other thing that I want to do, well, let me move myself far to the corner there, is just say that I had also posted that I was going to come back and get right on the content, and that was the intent. But the challenge with that was I actually had a potential client reach out to me, and we were talking about Proxmox and the benefits and what they could do as far as transitioning from VMware over because they, like a lot of other clients, got their renewal this year and were not only stunned by it, but didn't have any budget to account for that. And while I don't want to hate on VMware, like I've always said, I used VMware for years, like VMware. Actually worked at Brocade before Broadcom acquired them. And I don't dislike necessarily Broadcom either, but I think Broadcom's making some real mistakes. I'm messing with audio here too, folks. So if you're getting a little bit of waggle in the audio, sorry about that, but we're peeking out. But with all that said, we're back. We're doing this stuff, and the client is out of the cluster now, and they might get back in later. But I want to go ahead and get back to doing content for all of you and for me, and getting going from the two node cluster that we had, and then driving us over into the four node cluster. So tonight we're specifically going to do a live install Proxmox VE version 8.1. I had originally said in another video I probably wasn't going to do this. Some other people have done this. And the biggest reason why I wasn't sure I was set up to really even record that type of content. But the reality is, at least two of my boxes have iDRAX and have the perpetual enterprise iDRAX software on them. So today I set that up. As you'll look down here, we've added VLAN 14, and that's our IPMI or DRAC network. So any of you who don't know what the DRAC is, I forget exactly what it stands for, but it's Dell Remote Access and Management, something like that. But it's an out of band management methodology that allows you to see a console screen of boot. You can interact with the boot screen. You can go to the BIOS settings. You can do everything fully remote over the network. It actually, the controller boots live and gives you access to the BMC controller or the main board controller before it jumps into all the other things. So you can watch a live boot from across the world or anything else. IPMI is a similar technology or a combination of that technology. If I remember correctly, Dell's DRAC system are actually IPMI 4 compliant. Again, I'm talking a little out of turn here because this isn't my primary specialty. It's more of what my data center teams did and stuff. But I went through all these negotiations over the last 8 years when I was at Sauce Labs to make sure we had all the right stuff. That said, this is the network that we're working with. This is the network that is fully configured right now. So some of you have seen me doing some of the network configuration, and this is the live version of it. This is deployed across the entire network now. VLANs, all the gateways, all this stuff. So as we reference the network, this is the all-in network. Also with that, I've brought this up a couple times. This is my service catalog running on Homar, not Homer. We had originally started with Homer. I'm not going to go through all that again. And then if you look, PVEC1 was the cluster node that we are looking to migrate to. But after messing around with the customer a little bit, me doing a couple other things, and then getting the DRAC network up and going, I can remotely do this. So I want to show you guys doing this live. So we're going to name the host PVEC1, and that's going to be PVE cluster member 1 is what it stands for. We're going to get away from the straight PVE 1 and 2. That way, I am considering potentially later throwing up some smaller hosts or maybe even a smaller cluster in the house for some services like the Unify controller. So the Unify controller is closer to the gateway and closer to all the devices. That way, if there is a segmentation to the shed slash data center space that I'm working in now, that we don't isolate the home network from the actual controller, which isn't a big deal usually, but I had a couple of issues when I was setting all this up. So we might do that later, but I want to differentiate between the cluster and maybe individual Proxmox hosts, that type of thing. So anyways, we're going to rename the host we're doing PVEC1. I am going to say that we are continuing to use, if we go back to the network, we're continuing to use 192.168.1 as our management network. And that is where our switches are going to live, our controller for Unify is going to live, and where the Proxmox primary interfaces are going to live. And then we'll apply some ACLs and stuff about that later to maintain control. But there are people who might see this who say you never use VLAN 1. I tend to agree. In an enterprise environment, everybody knows that if they can get access to VLAN 1, a lot of times you can get access to everything. And when I was doing big deployments, we did our best to just never use VLAN 1 or honeypotted or something like that. But in this case, you've got Ubiquiti's Unify platform that prefers VLAN 1. And I'm sure there's ways around that. And I've done some digging, and I even tried, and I got most of the stuff onto its own dedicated management VLAN, but a couple of the items just didn't want to join correctly, and it caused some hassle. So I just reverted everything to VLAN 1. When this is all said and done, that management VLAN 1 will have no access to the internet. It'll be fully ACL'd off, and that'll just be the state of that network because everything else will live in multiple interfaces. So let's just go ahead and get started. I could talk about this all day. So I am going to jump up here. This is the direct to the host. So the very first DRAC I set up was 10.1.14.20. That lives in the IPMI space that we have. You can get a lot of data around here. Maybe we'll play with this later. But the important part is I've already brought up a Java console, and that Java console is already showing me the boot. And I don't want to go through all that because that takes time, but effectively, and you'll see it do a full reboot. You'll see the full console when we finish installing. But what I did is I told it to go to next reboot, chose BIOS, so it would ask me for a BIOS setting. I did a power, I did a warm reset or a reboot, and then I hit F11 when it prompted me to, and that gave me my boot options. And then from my boot options, I get to here into this boot manager. And my mouse works, but it's slow and laggy, but you can also use your keys, which are tighter. So then what we're doing here, do you want to continue with a normal boot, a one-shot BIOS, launch system, all these other things? I want a one-shot BIOS boot menu here. So I'm going to hit this enter. And what that's going to do is that's going to take me to the bootable space. So when you look at the way this server's set up, if I remember correctly, I bought two servers at the same time. I'm pretty sure this has two SATA drives inside that might even be SDs that you can then put in mirrored mode and then install to. And we're going to look at that in a minute. But first thing we're going to do here is we're going to get away from all of that, and we're going to jump down because I have a SanDisk, a 64 gig SanDisk USB drive with Ventoy on it. Again, I need to start doing some notes and some blogging around this. Ventoy is a really cool tool that it is a single boot instance on a drive, and then you can have all sorts of ISOs on it. And you'll see that in a minute, and then you can choose from the ISOs. Right now, the only ISOs that are on it are PE or Proxmox PE 8.1 and then the backup server because I just downloaded them and threw them on this because I rebuilt this Ventoy disk tonight. But you can have Windows on it, Linux on it. You can have all sorts of ISOs on it. You can use it as a recovery disk. It's just a cool little way to carry around a lot of bootable OSs and tools right on a thumb drive, and it gives you a nice little menu. So we'll see that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to choose to boot from this USB SanDisk drive, hit enter, and then we're going to watch it go through the boot here. I am not going to change this. I'm going to minimize all these so it might be easier to see and less distracting. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go hide that right now just because, or make it large. I took it to full screen earlier and Dracs are weird. They're a little laggy, and by the time you hit a bunch of stuff, it's not always clear what you're doing. All right, but anyways, here's Ventoy. And Ventoy, like I said, gives you the option of what you want to boot. And I can boot the backup server. I can boot Proxmox. So we're going to boot Proxmox 8.2-1. I actually said it was 8.1. I've got the brand new version. I just downloaded tonight. Then we're going to boot into normal mode. And then here we go. And then we're going to do a graphical install. And barring any issues, which I didn't have last time I did this, this should just come up. The other thing that's worth saying is I've got a screen plugged into my into a VGA monitor behind me. If you've seen my stuff before, I've got another desk back there, and I'll keep my laptop and test rigs and stuff on it. So while I'm doing stuff, because the servers are all over there, the network's all behind me, and it's just quieter, and I like this corner better for working in my workspace. But anyways, if I have problems or if this screws up, I can kind of go look, but I'm watching it do exactly line by line what it's doing right here in this virtual Java console. And again, this is coming over the network. I might want to try to, I lied. I'm going to go ahead and just do a view and a full screen. It doesn't help you guys a lot, but it's going to give you a little bit more, and then I can always go back later and tell it not to full screen. So again, hopefully everything goes smoothly here. I have never installed this via DRAC before, but it should be no different than installing it on any other platform, just a little bit of extra lag for the mouse. So I'm going to click I agree to the EULA. And then, okay, so now we're going to tell it the target hard disk. And if you look here, I have a bunch of different drives. So this is going to be that original, or it's going to be the SanDisk. These are going to be my storage arrays that I turn into my ZFS array. And then SDA and B are 186 gig drives that are internal to the box. They're not in the front array. You have to pull the top, and they're the boot drives. So I'm going to go to options here. And I'm going to choose file system. And because I am blanking and it's 11 at night and it's been a long day, I'm pretty sure I want ZFS RAID 1. But I'm just checking my settings that I had before. 1. And yeah, it's the one I want because we wanted to mirror and we used ZFS last time. All right, so we're going to do ZFS RAID 1. We're going to get a mirror of, we're going to deselect all the drives because I don't want to accidentally choose the wrong ones. And I'm going to choose SDA and SDB, which are the 186 gig drives. And like I said, these others are half terabyte drives that we use, but we're not going to use those. So we're going to click do not use. Like I said, you can see the lag between what's coming, but this is all going across the network, so I'm not super worried about it. So there's disk setup. We're going to click OK. So the target is now ZFS RAID 1. So again, what we're going to do there, if you're new to this and you're new to RAID and all that, we're effectively just telling it ZFS, which is zettabyte file system. That's a whole other thing. But we're telling it that we want drive A and drive B to get the exact same data and then to stay in sync with each other. And then what that gives me is in the event that drive 1 dies, I'll still have drive 2 or B as a boot volume, or vice versa, B dies, A is still there. And then that way, if we have failures within the server, you don't lose the ability to boot. That's all we're getting to here. And I have that option in the server, even though it's a lab server, so I'm going to use it. So here we go. Next, at United States, my time zone is America, Denver. English, next. I'm going to try to type the password here. And this is not my permanent password. I am going to go back and change this later. Email, we'll just do Josh O'Brien 77 at, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's do J O'Brien at highdesertsystems.com, which is the consulting company. So we'll just do that, and then we'll do next. All right, so then here we get all the basic data. So here's our primary interfaces that they give us, and we want to use, and this is where I'm going to confuse things a little bit. I think I have a whole drawing of this someplace. And again, this is, you guys get to do things live with me. And when I screw them up, all that much better. So I am going to hop off here for just 2 seconds while we do this. I'm just going to set it to be right back. I'm just going to go check physical interfaces and see if I can validate which one I'm looking at real quick, because what I don't want to do is misconfigure this because the VLANs are already configured right and everything else. So give me just 2 seconds. All right, and we're back. So I'm pretty sure that we're looking at ENO3, which is showing gigabyte. I think these IXs are my 10 gig. So we're going to choose ENO3 as our primary because our management interface is going to be gig. We don't need any more than that. And then our 10 gigs are going to be used for a lot of different things, and we'll get into that later, like Ceph and primary interface and a bunch of other things. So anyways, now we're going to go back to the naming. So our FQDN for this is going to be PVE. Let me do it here. This is going to be PVE C1 cluster host 1. Let's do this. No, let's keep this simple. I was going to do something complex, so let's not do it. So new nmw.staticnat.com. So that's my local domain. And then we are going to use 192.168.1.12 for this host. We're going to stay in 24. All of this stuff stays the same. I think it picked all this up from DHCP. We still have DHCP on because we have things that need it on that network until we've completed all the migration. Because while I'm doing all this, there's still things in the house that need to be on that we haven't done all the service cutover for. Anyways, so that has our network there. I chose 12 because I've got a smattering of things all over the place where that used to be the home network. The 192.168.1 has stuff all over it. So I chose the first network interface that kind of gave us space to then grow into 12, 13, 14, and 15 in a linear fashion, so the clusters are all in the same space. And we might re-IP these later, but for now it's a space I have, and we're just going to go with it. All right, so all that's done, and we're going to click Next. This all looks good. Automatically reboot after successful install, and we're going to click Install. So this is going to take a little bit of time. This isn't crazy outrageous, but again, this is a live install of Proxmox. I want you guys to all kind of see what's what you're dealing with. And this is pretty good hardware. I mean, we can go back and we can look at some aspects of it. So if we were to go, while this is doing it, we're going to do view. Let's kill full screen. Let's go back to the iDRAC. So you guys have some concept of what this host is. Let's go to, so first off, it's a PowerEdge R630. That's the hardware we're on. If we go and we look at hardware, all right, I'm going to have to log back in. Hopefully that didn't kill our other session. If it did, we'll figure it out. Nope, that session's still there and installing. That's good. That makes me happy. So we're going to go back here. It's pulling data. I want to look at the hardware if it'll let me. If it'll be play nice. Yep, there we go. So then we're going to click down through hardware. So you first off, you get data on this. This is cool, right? This is a pretty quick run through of like, hey, what's the health of my box from a pure management perspective. You can see like graph of overall system utilization. If we go look at heat, let's see, power and thermal. This is good data. So if you look at the last day on power, and then where's my thermal? Oh, it's temperatures. So if we look at today, you'll notice we had a really bad spike earlier today. And that was because I forgot to shut off or forgot to turn on the AC last night when I left doing some other video work. And because it was cold here in Wyoming. And when I didn't just set it, I came out this morning to the servers screaming, sun beating down on the roof. My exhaust fan that I've added to pull hot air away from the ceiling, none of that was working. And it was like 100 degrees in this room. So, anyways, these are good pieces of data. But point being, this is what you get out of your DRAC and your BMC card. Let's go back over the DRAC. Oh, we're going quick here. It's doing install stuff. I don't want to miss a whole lot of it. We're still cranking on that. All right, while we're doing that, again, just so we can show it, we're going to look at the hardware. As far as CPUs on this, there are two CPUs. They're both 14 cores, so I've got 28 cores, and that comes out to, I think, 56 total threads I can run with virtualization on. And then memory-wise, this box has got 256 gig of RAM on it right now. That's way more than the other boxes had, both in overall core count and as far as RAM. So that's going to give us a big jump as to what we can do in the lab. So let's go back to the iDRAC. So we're going through all this stuff. We're about 86%. And again, this is all the normal install stuff you're going to get when you're running the Proxmox install. I don't want to say that too many times or keep repeating, but just the necessity of getting it installed. Not seeing any of you on yet. Hopefully, this means you'll pick up the stream later or go look at the YouTube channel. I'm going to try to start chopping some of this content into smaller bits and getting it up on um, TikTok and maybe some shorter things on YouTube as well. But for now, we're just kind of doing the streams and then putting the whole streams out on YouTube for everybody to consume. All right, so we're at making this bootable. The cool thing is, like, we've mirrored this. All the ZFS stuff's happened really quick here. I will point out when you're using ZFS and you use it on the local drives like I'm doing here, you do end up with some challenges as far as overhead for CPU and things like that. We're not going to do this tonight because this is all about installing, getting the base setup going. But one of the things that we are going to do is we are going to end up setting up volumes in Ceph. That's going to be one of my next big things. So we're going to back up all the hosts that I need. We're going to bring down one of the other servers. We're going to bring another server to a cluster, not tonight. And then I will show you guys how to set up the clustering and do all that. Get the hot proxy network going and everything else. There's our reboot that we talked about coming in. So we're going to do view, we're going to do full screen. Again, you saw it lost signal as the BMC came up. All this is cool. This is live console over your network. But anyways, we're going to do the whole setup of the cluster, the hot proxy network, the storage network. We're going to do all that in a setting up the cluster. Setting up the cluster video next. And then what we're going to do from there, we're going to do a full backup and a Proxmox backup. And then what we'll start doing is we'll start restoring critical VMs from the backup as we turn them down. So this isn't going to be a hitless upgrade or update. There are other ways we could do it. I could tear down the cluster and we could just join the members to the new cluster. There are some options for that, but what I've decided to do and that I want to show people is what I want to do a full backup of all of my VMs, and then I want to bring them into Proxmox. The reason I want to do that is because there's a lot of you who are transitioning away from VMware, or maybe your own homegrown KVM solution, or maybe you were running your virtualization in VMware Workstation or Fusion. And what I want to do is I kind of want to show what happens when you take backup copies of those and just kind of bring them in. The other cool thing I saw literally just announced earlier tonight, and I had heard it was coming, but I hadn't seen an official announcement, was that Veeam in the next release is going to offer Proxmox support. So I haven't messed with Veeam in a long time. Again, I haven't been doing active VMware stuff in a long time, but Veeam, from what I understand, has been kind of the standard for backups and for disaster recovery on VMware. It definitely was when I was back doing things. They were constantly shoving out new things. And I think their support for VMware or for Proxmox is going to be really powerful. So with that, I'm hoping what happens is that whatever integration they do with Veeam, okay, we're at boot screen. We're just going to hit yes. So we just bypass that. But I'm hoping whatever their integration is with Proxmox is going to allow Proxmox to connect to it like it would its own backup server and then just do a restore of the VM. I don't know if it will. I haven't seen it demoed, but that's my hope. And so by doing what we're doing here and doing a backup directly into a new cluster from an existing Proxmox cluster, I'm hoping to kind of demonstrate that. Then if I can get demos of Veeam, again, I don't know where they are with community or anything at this point, but if I can get demos of Veeam, then what I'd like to do is I'd like to back up some environment or get backup copies in Veeam and then show recovering them into Proxmox, into the new running cluster, but we're not there yet. All right, so here we are as I take out my mic cable. So this is the new cluster, and it's showing that it's at 192.168.1.12. And here I am just going to kill the full screen, and we're going to jump to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go into my service catalog. I haven't showed you guys a lot with this, but I believe firmly that whether you're using a big enterprise service catalog through many of the identity providers, whatever you're using, or if you're just doing home lab, a service catalog is super important for a lot of reasons. But we can go into that later. So the first thing I want to do is just update my service catalog. So I'm going to go into my edit. I'm going to go into edit PVEC1, and then you're going to see that this is all done by name. So with that done by name, all I should have to do is go into Pi-hole 1. So we'll close that. And I'm going to authenticate into here, and I'm going to do Pi-hole admin login. And then I'm going to go to local DNS. And again, if you watch my DNS and HA, I don't like this part because right now, Pi-hole doesn't have an easy way, unless you go in and you use the CLI to modify local entries, which is one of several reasons why I think Pi-hole is probably not going to be my long-term DNS as far as for the lab, but right now it is. It's quick, it's easy. So we're just going to fix this. So we're going to go to PVEC1, which is this guy right here. And again, I don't have an edit, and that bothers me. And I have updates available, but we'll do that later. So what I'm going to do, actually, I might have done something smart, guys. Apparently, I already used 192.168.1.12, knowing that I was going to do this. And if I think about it, I remember doing it kind of, so let's just go see if it works. It's already gone green. It was red earlier when it was in DRAC mode, so when it didn't actually have a local one to the production NICs. So we're just going to click on that. There we go. It's going to come up right up and give us. So I am going to choose. So I have a different root password this time. So we're just going to, so that one's no longer valid. We'll have to fix that a little bit, but that's easy enough to do. So something I want to point out here, I've been messing around with this. When I was setting things up for the client to look at this, that you have two modes of authentication inside of Proxmox. You have Linux PAM standard authentication. That's the standard root user, whatever user you go into Debian or whatever your Linux flavor is, and you put in to the Linux um, access management. I forget exactly what PAM stands for, but yeah. So the other one is Proxmox VE authentication server. This is interesting. What's interesting about this is if you go into VE authentication server, that is where you can get really granular. Not only with all your configurations and pools, and we'll show that later because I did a lot of messing with that to get client access in here and to show the client what limitations there were and stuff like that. But also, this is replicated across every host in the cluster. So, like the root user that I'm using for Linux standard PAM authentication, which is the initial user that gets spun up inside Proxmox, that's local only. And it's that root user is like full admin access, full everything. So if you ever want to fully replicate that root user, you have to do it as a sudo enabled user in PAM. But if you just want, but if I shouldn't say just, but if you'd like to go in and do granular cluster level authentication that's replicated across the cluster for multiple users and for multiple least access type roles and minimums like service type rules, that is done through Proxmox VE authentication server. And we'll do a whole nother live on that probably. And again, there's great videos out there. I need to really start showing some of the content that I've watched to get people up on this, but there's a lot cleaner content than mine. Mine, as you guys know, is kind of rough. Do it live, figure it out, figure out the problems as we go. So we'll just choose PAM for now because that's our initial one. We're going to hit login. Very first thing, this is a brand new server. Nothing else has ever happened to it. The other thing I wanted you guys to see is I didn't want to see you guys to see that I've messed with a bunch of different stuff. So we came up to 8.2.2. That's the most recent server I think I have. I think the others are on 8.1. We can go look. This is the actual production cluster for now. So if we do root, and then now these are 8.2.2 as well. So it looks very similar, PVE1 versus PVEC1. So we're just going to close that because we're not messing with that stuff right now. But this is where it comes in. Since you don't have a valid subscription server, please visit Proxmox. Again, I want to first off advocate that if you guys are going to run this as a home lab or whatever, they've got very cost-effective, even home lab licensing. I'm not doing that right now for a couple reasons. One is I'm unemployed and I'm looking to build this content out as part of like getting back into the space and creating a content brand. But I do plan on supporting these guys once I get money coming back in consistently from the job. That's, excuse me, neither here nor there. If you're doing enterprise, you should definitely be buying enterprise tier licensees, and this goes away. I'm also going to point out there are some scripts out there that purport that they can get rid of this. And I tried one in the 8 cluster. I don't think it's been tested in the 8 cluster. This doesn't bother me. It's just, hey, a little thing remind you you're not running a subscription. So I'm going to click OK there. So now we have the data center. This looks very similar to the other Proxmox stuff we've shown. You have a single server. You'll see that it has a local ZFS storage pool. This is the boot drive. We could probably deploy some stuff here, but this is the boot drive. We're not going to deploy anything here. This is a local drive, and again, you're seeing 191 gig available on it. This is absolutely that boot volume. We're going to do a couple other setup things here tonight. I do have to go back into PVE1 and 2. So I mentioned to you that when I had the heat and power thing earlier today, I had to resolve that quickly. And part of resolving that quickly for me was, one, getting all the fans cooling on and everything, but I immediately shut the servers down. I didn't want the servers running that hot. One, it was defeating cooling the space down. Two, it was potentially going to heat them over to a point of damage. I didn't want to do that either. So I've got a big fan back here. I pushed all the hot air out the main door, had everything running, and like 30 or 40 minutes later, I was able to get things cool enough in here to go back to business as usual. Not make dumb mistakes again and go on from there. We're actually picking up a 4-post rack tomorrow. It's going to come in here. Then we're going to permanently mount the servers probably this week, along with doing some more work in the office lab space. And then from there, I'm going to find some ducting where I am going to duct off the servers specifically and their hot airflow. And I'm going to install a fan exfil so we can just push the hot air out during the summer. Otherwise, I don't even think with the nice portable AC I bought a big portable Toshiba AC to have in here until we can later get a mini split for the space. I don't think it'll be workable in here. We've already had 70-degree days where that little Toshiba is just pushing hard in this space, which is fine without the servers. Doesn't work well with the servers. But anyways, all that said, we can talk about all that stuff later. Eventually, gonna get a mini split in here that's like 4x what the space needs, and even without the ducting, it'd be fine. But my goal is to be smart about what we're doing. So get as much heat out so we can be efficient with our cooling. And then in winter, quite honestly, I'll probably bypass the ducting or push the ducting into the room because I don't mind that it heats space in the winter because when we've had negative 30-degree days here, I think any heater I put out here is going to work hard. So I'm fine with the extra 20 or 30 degrees that we're going to be getting out of the servers in the winter. And then we can just, kick ducting back in for spring and summer and fall. But anyways, neither here nor there. So with that said, all that stuff was shut down. So with that, a couple things. That means my TrueNAS box got closed down. So we're just going to start it. Reason I'm starting TrueNAS is because I'm going to show you the basic setups that I'm going through with a new server. One of the things you can't do on TrueNAS is with Proxmox is if you go and you look at, say, storage, and I'm trying to find exactly. So right here. So if you look down here, and so say we were to scramble. Here we go. So if you look at ZFS or if you look at the local PVE, there's an ISO image space. What's cool about this is if you have a single host, you could just click upload or download from URL. And what it does is it immediately allows you to just put ISOs in. ISOs that like VMware, TrueNAS, whatever boxes you're going to build. So you've got to have ISOs available for those. And that's really cool because natively they've got this built into the local. Well, what happens is that doesn't go across the cluster. There's no synchronization, right now at least, of what the local ISO images are from one host to the other. And if you go up to the data center and you look at like storage, you don't have like if we go here, there's no like, it's not shared. You can see all this stuff. If we go and look at edit, you can click shared. And I haven't done this. Matter of fact, this might even be new. I don't know. There might be a way to share it. But when I was setting up my clusters initially, all the recommendations were to set up a kind of third party ISO SMB container. So that's what I did. I set up TrueNAS, and I'm using TrueNAS Core. TrueNAS Scale is out now, and I honestly have tried 3 times now to get Scale up and going, and I can get it booted. I can get to do some things, but quite honestly, it keeps crashing. I don't know if it's a lack of resources. I don't know if it's a configuration thing on my part. But I have heard through the forums and stuff, a lot of people say that while TrueNAS Scale is like the next gen of TrueNAS, it's not stable. So I've nuked it off all of my hosts. I'm not messing with it right now. And I just have TrueNAS up, and I have an ISO share. And if you look, this ISO was hidden before, or wasn't hidden, but it was like grayed out before, and now it's connected. So these are all the ISOs that live in my current TrueNAS. And if we go and look at like data center, and then we look at this is where we actually set that up, and it's Mount PVE ISO with some credentials, and it's just a CIFS or SMB share. So, and that, like I said, that's being hosted off TrueNAS. And then what that allows me to do is once I connect that, then it's available to all the hosts and it can pull it. And then once we get everything into Ceph, that file share should actually be local to every host. The problem with that is it won't, while the volume's local and the data's kind of local, it's still going to be going over to a VM that could be sitting on a different host. So it is pulling this ISO over a network share, but that share is also effectively 10 gig on the background. So for our purposes, it's not bad, and we'll be able to see that some, especially as we move over to PVEC1 because it'll be two separate clusters. So now we're going to go over to PVEC1. And again, I am going to do a couple things, but I wanted to get that ISO host up first. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to go into the actual host, and I want to go into updates and repos. So let's go into repos first. So the very first thing you're going to notice is you've got these two enterprise repos. This is enterprise Ceph, and this is enterprise Proxmox. What we're going to do here is we're going to click on them and we're going to disable them. So now the enterprise paid for repositories are disabled. If we didn't do this, and I can show you, we'll re-enable them and I'll show you real quick what happens. You would then go to, so we'll click reload, and then we're going to go to updates. Okay, so now we're going to do a refresh. This is you don't have a valid subscription, blah, 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 all that. So it's going to go through all of these, and then you're going to see these unauthorized. And that's not what you want to see when you're doing your upgrades. And then you're going to see all these fails and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to kill that. And you're going to see right here, update package database. We have reds, and it's because it had the failed to get the repositories. That is all. And you can see it did get some repos from the public repos. So we go back to the repos. You've got standard Debian repos here that it was totally fine with. It pulled those, but it threw errors. So now we're going to go into the two enterprise ones again and disable them. And we're also going to go add. And it's going to tell us we don't have it. That's fine. We're going to move away from enterprise and go to no subscription. And we're going to click add. This gives us PVE no subscription. This is their lab use. This is their sandbox use. Again, they give you 100% of the features, no questions asked. They just don't give you the enterprise repos nor any type of support. The other thing I'm going to go add here is I am going to go add, I think let's go look at what the current version of Ceph is. So current Ceph release for Debian. And I probably should have looked at this before. I think Reef, that was from August. So Reef is the one that we're currently on and supported. So let's kill that stuff. And then let's go back to PVEC1. And we're going to go choose Ceph Reef non-subscription. And again, it's the same thing. It's not validated and all this stuff. You're not going to get support on it. And we're going to add that. Not because I am going to do Ceph stuff right this second, but we are going to do Ceph. We're going to try Ceph. I've heard mixed bags on it. Might be fine for my lab, might not be fine for your production. I know a lot of people are using ZFS clusters outside and then connecting via 25 or 100 gig or even 10 gig in a couple of spaces. But we're going to try to do Ceph because I want to do the whole hyper-converged thing. I want to do the kind of build your own Nutanix without Nutanix community and without the 3-node limit. Like I want to build something that's potentially truly production available with the right configurations and stuff like that. So we're going to go enable. But if you look, no subscription repo is not recommended for production use. Same thing, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go to updates. We're going to do a refresh. We should get totally clean now. There should be no more errors here. And any of you who are familiar with the whole apt ecosystem inside of Ubuntu, that's all this is. Or inside Debian, that's all this is. It's using apt get and update. So that's done. We'll go ahead and close that. You'll see it was successful here. The next thing we're going to do is do upgrade. This is exactly the apt get upgrade. We're going to tell it yes because nothing's production on here. I want the cleanest, most secure, most up-to-date version we can on this node. If you're doing this in prod, you're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff. You're going to do validation. You're going to make sure all your stuff works, your recovery works. We're going to send it. For those of you curious, I am running a gig down from my provider. My provider's all west out of Utah. They bought the cable provider here in our area, and we get pretty good connectivity through them. I am running the UDM Pro from Unify. It's their older Pro model. It's discontinued now, but it's capable of a gig throughput with a couple of the features disabled. It's one of my biggest kind of gripes with Unify is that even the Pro stuff, I had the old little security box, the teeny tiny little square one. I forget what it was. And if you turned any features on, that thing was limited down to like sub 50 meg almost instantly. So when we upgraded to gig, I upgraded to the UDM Pro. The UDM Pro gave me some issues with like all of the security features on. I tuned a couple down, and now we easily get a gig through. And then again, once we're back up and generating the appropriate revenue, I'm probably going to go to one of the newer UDM Pros. I like the Unify ecosystem. Seen some things publicly lately where people are talking about, oh, Unify is for people who don't like to network. I've built and managed some quite large global networks, and I love Cisco and I love Juniper. Not a big fan of HP. Sorry, Juniper. Um, Big fan of some of the things Dell's doing. Like I'm an enterprise and data center networking guy, um, but it's also nice just to have a pretty screen sometime and things just to work. And who's to say that as my career goes on, as we do more stuff in the lab, depending on what I do, that we won't move away from that. And I've even hinted before, there's a decent chance that everything out here in the lab becomes Cisco or Dell or becomes something else. I'm definitely looking at bringing some Cisco or Dell 10 or 25 gig switches in, some used ones, because there's definitely some limitations on the 10 gig switch that I got from Unify. But again, it was the cheapest one on the market, and it wasn't 25 gig, it was 10, sorry. But it was able to get me 8 ports of 10 gig for $250. Nobody else could do that without bringing in the big monster Nexus boxes. And I could do that, but they're super loud. Super power hungry for the ones I was looking at, but I did find something in the Nexus 3000 series, I think, that's an L3 10 gig switch, even with some 100 gig uplinks on them, I think, or 100 gig breakouts, which I probably won't use. But anyways, that's all moot. So here we go. We're up to date, and it says, oh, by the way, you did a kernel update, so you should probably reboot. So we're going to do that. So I am going to exit this shell. Yep, we're going to leave the shell. By the way, there's a couple other things that's interesting to point out. You could root right into Proxmox, but there are some things that you'll find over time that it recommends you don't SSH right in. And if especially if you're in their docs and stuff and it says shell in or console in, they've got this no VNC console. I haven't played with the Spice or the Xterm one yet, but if you just no VNC into this, this is the console that you keep seeing pop up every time updates happen or anything like that. And it's pretty responsive. So you can do standard ls-a if I could type, and it didn't like that. Anyways, ignore me. It's got standard commands on it. Oh, IPA. That's what I'm being dumb about. So IPA. Sorry, it's late. Like I said, this expands out. It's kind of like the other terminal box. It doesn't give you a whole lot. You can't copy and paste in here. I haven't tried the Xterm one. I'm betting the Xterm one you can. Maybe even the Java one you can. And this just basic no VNC one. It gives you a good console, and it allows you to go from there. So we're going to go ahead and close that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reboot. And if we go down and we hold the drag here, let's do my little split here. And then we'll take and we'll split this. Not sure what I'm doing here. There we go. Close enough. You guys can see it. I don't know if you can see all the details. But over here on the left, we have our DRAC live interface over here on the right. And I'm just going to make sure we're clicked on this host. Not a problem because we're not in the rest of the data center, and we're going to click reboot. So after the reboot, I'm going to show you a couple basic things that I'm going to do to set up the rest of the cluster. I'm not going to set up Ceph tonight. I want to make sure I've got that all right because I want you guys to all be able to see Ceph set up right the first time. And I'm only partway through the docs. Plus, we're at an hour, and I want to try to keep these around an hour. I'm definitely streaming tomorrow and recording more content. Probably tomorrow evening. We're heading out of town for a little bit during the day to do some stuff that we need to do. But tomorrow night I should probably be back, hopefully before 10, 10 p.m. my time. That is, so that's Mountain Time, and hopefully get to stream to you guys again. But tonight, to wrap up, once this comes back up, well, first off, you're gonna notice like the PVE screen stays here. It's a reactive HTML environment. I think HTML5 environment. I don't remember exactly. I'm not gonna freak out over that. You can go dig for that. I'm a little surprised this didn't go red, but it's probably because there's no other cluster nodes to forward that data on. So we're just gonna wait for this to come back up and go to the Proxmox um, sign-in screen, and then we'll refresh this and everything will be back up. Like, just to prove my point, if we refresh this right now, it's going to time out. Yeah, it's just going to sit here and spin. And even if we go over to our service catalog, you're going to look that right now PVE C1 is down. I'm not sure why these two are showing down. Open a new tab. Yeah, it's definitely open. Yeah, it just took a minute for it to refresh, but you're seeing this is red. And if we were to open that up in a new tab, you're going to see that it doesn't come up. It's going to do exactly what it did over here, which is just timeout. So we're going to minimize that again, put it back over here so we can see them both side by side. And now we're just waiting for the server to finish its boot cycle. There's the grub boot. This is really cool. I've been running back and forth to the screen behind me. I've kept that screen up. I'm going to be glad to be able to bring that screen down now. I know that my Proxmox backup server has the same DRAC setup. I'm not sure about the other two servers. And the reason why is those are older cloud servers. Cloud servers, I think they were OEM'd from Dell. But Dell even referred to them back in the day as a cloud server, so I don't know who or where or what. And they've got a DRAC interface, but I think it's more of an IPMI interface, and I haven't messed with it. But we are going to mess with it because if I have this option, I would love to have this option for everything. All right, we're up. So login's back. We're going to do a refresh on this. Everything should be back up. Let's kill that one. That one. There we go. Just took a minute. All right, so we're going to go back to full screen on this guy. So we are back in. This is the brand new one. This is the new node. This will be the cluster master for the new cluster we're building. So then I'm going to go back into here because I think this is important. I like this feature, and it's such a simple feature. And again, I haven't been in VMware in a long time. So I'm going to pull up my primary cluster unit right now. So I'm going to go in here, and this is on the current production cluster. If you go to data center, you've got all the normal summary and blah, blah, blah. One of the things they have is notes. And I love this because in my cluster, I'm able to keep cluster specific notes. And if I go click edit, it gives me an edit frame. And in that edit frame, I can put all of this stuff. I can put copy and paste section. So how to point at an app proxy. So the app proxy that I have, if I run this command after I've got DNS and everything set up, then it very quickly sets up my app proxy to go to point to my app cache local. But things like the Proxmox client install, it's one of those things that I could probably, if I wasn't doing 10 million things to remember, but I can just reference where it is and it talks me through it. One of the things that happens with Proxmox backup server, if a backup fails, sometimes VM will stay locked and you can't really do anything with it. So you can go in and do a QM unlock and then the VM ID. These are just little things that I've picked up so far over time. So we're just going to copy all those notes because I reference them all the time. We're going to click OK or just close it because we didn't change anything. And then you'll see how that is all defined here. Like all the URLs are clickable. So how to move a VM from a VirtualBox to Proxmox. I can right click on that, click new tab. I can reference it all right out of here. This is super helpful if you're running your home lab in VirtualBox, and the same path applies to if you're going to bring in other QEMU based things. It's just nice to have that data. So we're going to replicate that on the new cluster. I'm going to go to notes. I'm going to click edit. I'm just going to paste it in as plain text, tell it OK, and I've got all that. So that's the very first thing I'm going to do because there's no other way that that's going to replicate across my cluster. So that's one. It's also worth noting that if, and we go here and we look at users. So if you look, any of the users, like this Terraform provisioner is one of the Proxmox virtual authentication units. That goes across all these hosts. It'll log you into any of these hosts. And I don't know if there's an easy way to see that. I haven't really looked around users and stuff. I don't think there is. I think it's all managed at the data center level. But that won't come across here. So if we go to data center and look, the only user that's here right now is root, which is the initial provisioning host. So we'll have to replicate all of the service accounts and all their types and everything back across later as part of that. So far the fixes we've done is we've moved to the non-production repositories and we've updated everything. We've updated the kernel, rebooted. I just moved all of my notes across. And I've told you guys that you're going to have to manually move your users across. There might be some actual files that you can grab and do that. That's probably a thing for another point in time. We'll probably spin up like a baby cluster inside the cluster at some point, a nested cluster to test some of these other thoughts and ideas later. Because these are all things that come up in production. Oh, can we do this? Can we do that? What about this? And that's a lot of what I did with the client the other day. The client had a lot of these same questions, and I went through them the best of my ability. Last thing I claim to be is a Proxmox expert, but I'm trying to get there, and I want to bring other people along as well. So with that said, what we want to do now is we want to, at the data center level, we want to go look at storage. And this is where we're going to add that CIF share that we were talking about earlier that is off of, you know what? Let's put a pin in that for a second. I lied. We're going to go back to the network at this point. So let's go to the host. Let's go to network. Right now you see all these network interfaces. And if we look at this, this gets the default Linux bridge. And if you guys remember from what we did up here, we have, so if we go to PVE1 here, we have network. And on that Linux bridge, we are doing a couple different things. And this is like the VM public interface. It's also the interface for, yeah, it's the VM public interface. And we, at some point, oh, we had done it. I did this the other day on the cluster for you guys. What I had done is I had shown that we can move the network management interface over to a different interface, and then we can go from there. So the next thing we ought to do is set up the interface. We're at an hour. And quite honestly, I totally spaced this. So let's not do the rest tonight. You've seen a base install. You've seen a couple of the features. Tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to do a finish setting up the cluster. I'll have a network diagram that breaks down the exact config that we're doing and why we're doing it that way. And I'll ensure that it's all dialed. So that's my bad. And again, we want to keep these in an hour anyways. And we're 30 seconds off of that. So with that, I just want to say thank you to all of you who watched this. I know there's no viewers tonight, and I know that's mostly my issue. I need to get on a schedule so you guys know when and where to watch if you're interested in this stuff. But I appreciate anybody who watches this. I appreciate all the people who have supported me through comments and through reposting my stuff. And my friend James, if you watch this, huge influence, man. They're actually running a big production Proxmox cluster, and they're the ones who brought the client to me the other day. So I'll give a shout out to them at Massive Networks and the cool things they're doing. So if you haven't heard of them, go check out Massive. And then on top of that, James, just thank you. And again, thank you to everybody else who's watching. So with that, everybody have a great rest of your evening, morning, wherever you are. It's already morning here, and we should be back on tomorrow night to do this again. Thanks, everybody.